of sensitives known as the Brotherhood of the Followers of the Present Jesus. And these are, we call them lovingly, our pink books. And all of them are in our bookstore for sale. So if you have not got the whole series, or it makes also a wonderful present, so check our bookstore. This is Everlasting Peace. And I am reading from page 33. On the bottom it says, "You yourselves know how to contact joy. Stop, attune yourselves to joy in some way, any way. It will come to you how. For you should be at all times so filled with joy and laughter that you do not know how to bring it all forth and express it, and will be looking for ways to express this wonderful joy which is yours, which is the Father God has given to you, which is the essence of God. Joy is your attuning to life. And if you do not feel joy, tune yourselves in a better way. This is a commandment. This is more important than you realize. This is something you should and must do for yourselves. Learn how to be joyful, and the joy itself creates for you a joyous life. Tune in first, rather than scurry about trying to create the situation which will bring you joy. Be joyful first. Leave the rest to the workings of joy itself." So this is the message for today. And our speaker is a lady who expresses joy all the time. First of all, through her music. Secondly, remember she was teaching little children, and you can't help but be joyful when you are among children. She's also, as you see, a multiple cat owner.
That brings lots of joy.
That brings lots of joy. And of course, she is, I think, now a great grandmother as well. So, wonderful attributes. Speaking this morning to us about the topic, as you know, for the month of June is living in simplicity. And so she is talking about living simply. Please help me welcome Reverend Elizabeth Brabant.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see, we have a little shade here we don't need on the paper. There we go. Well, I was so glad that I got this topic, living simply, because it's not something that I think about that often. And so it really caused me to, go into deep meditation and really start thinking about how simple I could make my life. And which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And each of us is a divinely unique, special individual. We are all different, and alike in some ways, of course. But all of us can choose to lead a plain, uncomplicated, simple life, if that is our desire. Well, today I want to talk a little bit, first of all, about just having simple pleasures during the day. And then our awareness of our spiritual goals. We always talk about at New Year's manifestation, but we don't usually use the word spiritual goals. So be kind of thinking about what maybe your spiritual goals are, because we'll have a chance to share about that later. And then tuning in to our Christ self and learning how, from the Christ level, to live simply. That's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. It's a great thing to do. And I've learned a lot, too. Living simply, then, is something that is important, I think, for all of us. Why complicate our life? We can simplify our life. And just think for a few moments about what simple pleasures you have in your life. They're going to be different for all of us because we're all different. Like, I know a lot of you would love to go to a Major League Baseball game.
Yeah.
And that's at the end of my list. But I would love to go hear a choral concert. And probably a lot of you, maybe a few of you, would not even like that at all. We are uniquely different, but we all have our own way of finding out our own simple pleasures. Pleasure is nature's sign of well-being. If you don't have pleasure and you don't have joy in your life, really think about that, because it's a wonderful way even to heal whatever in your life you need to heal, by thinking of those wonderful, simple pleasures in your life. My Aunt Virginia, I wanted to tell you about her. She's in heaven now. I'm going to believe that that is so. But she was one of my younger aunts, and we lived in Huntington Park, which is a part of metropolitan Los Angeles as I was growing up. And when I was younger, we used to go over to Virginia's house, you know, and they'd talk and talk and talk. And I would hear her, and I had started going to the Methodist Church when I was actually in junior high, but I became much more active when I was in high school and college. But Virginia would always say, "Dorothy, that's my mother, you need to really look into what's going on at that church, because they're having fun there." It seems to be a joyous place. That doesn't seem right. That was not her experience of what church should be like. Well, at the Methodist Church where I was going from junior high all the way through even being a young adult for several years before we moved away from there, we had wonderful, wonderful counselors. And these counselors would guide us as we were making our plans. And yes, they wanted our plans to be growth producing. They wanted us to have a wonderful growth experience, and yet at the same time wanted us to have fun. And so they did. They guided us, and we had both. We had growth experiences and we had fun. We had a lot of joy. And they would really bend over backwards to try to help us figure out how both of these things could go together easily and effortlessly. So we were always having wonderful activities at that church, and they were fun. And they were joyous, but they were also very growth producing within each individual. that was going to the church. And as I was thinking about the simple pleasures in my life, I thought back to, actually, this started when I was a little girl, but continued all the way through, I'd say, probably about 19 or 20 was the age that the last time that I saw this house. And there was a huge house that my grandparents had. It had actually been a boarding house, but they needed a huge place because they had 10 children. My mother was one of 10 that were born into that family. She was right in the middle. And so all these bedrooms and all of the places that we had, the large rooms, were fantastic. But the thing that made me think about a simple pleasure was their porch. They had this long porch, and they had all kinds of, they had a swing out there, and they had all kinds of chairs, rocking chairs, other kinds of chairs. And after lunch or dinner, they would go out, at least the men would. The women were usually cleaning things up. But the men and the children, I was one of the children a lot of the time, would go out and sit on the porch, or we would play right in front of where they were sitting. And then usually for dinner, by then, they had figured out how the women, we could all go out and sit on the porch. And this little town, Norman, Indiana, the population was under 100. And I had 2 uncles who had many children that lived there. And so, you know, there were a lot of people that I knew that would walk by and come up and sit on the porch with us. And of course, the older I got, the more I would sit on the porch instead of trying to play in front on the grass where the children usually hung out. And if I got a little tired, I'd go inside, and we also had a player piano with all of these rolls of songs that were popular, and that was much, much simple fun too. And the Normans were singers too. That they loved to sing. And so even some of the adults would join us for that. But I didn't have quite as many simple pleasures when I lived in, actually at that, as I was growing up until 6th grade, I lived in El Centro. And it was very hot out in the summertime, so you stayed inside as much as you could with the air conditioning, if you had air conditioning or fans. At any rate, all of these things came together to give us many simple pleasures. Then, I want to talk too today about our awareness of our spiritual goals. And I chose spiritual goals because I think that those goals, for me at least, did help me to live a little more simply in my life. And Jesus, in John 15:11, says, quote, "These things I have spoken to you, that your joy may be in you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be completely full." So even Jesus, we don't always think of him as joyous, loving, yes, but he was joyous as well, and had that joy within himself that he wanted to share with others. So I thought, and be thinking for a moment while I'm speaking about any spiritual goals that you might have or want to have if you don't already. I chose a couple for myself, and the first one of my goals was to have greater joy and love and respect for myself and others. I've always found that the more I love myself, the more I respect myself, the more joy I have myself, the more I can give it away to others. If we don't have it within ourselves, it's very difficult to give it to someone else or to be that way for other people. And the other one I had was, and this is sort of part of the first one in a way, because it takes forgiveness to really love yourself. So one of my goals was to forgive myself and others. And that was important so that I could love myself more. You know, if you're raking yourself over the coals every moment, you're not going to be able to love yourself very well. Well, these kind of came together for me to help me have a simple life in a fuller way for myself. Did anyone else think of any goals they have that might be spiritual goals? You know, if you choose, you don't have to. If anybody thinks of one, you can raise your hand. At any rate, the third thing that I thought about was tuning in to my Christ self concerning my living simply. Because you know, the Christ is Emmanuel, God within us. And everything we want to know about any subject, we can go inside to our Christ self to learn more about it. So I did work with my Christ self as Jesus, and I worked with Jesus a lot about my living simply, and how Jesus as my Christ self could help me live more simply. And as I was meditating, praying, everything that I do to become a more spiritual person, I could use for living simply as well. Now, there is a book that I found in my own library, and I'll have to admit that I hadn't read it before this. I don't even know how long I've had it. You know, I've got a lot of books, and a lot of the books have to do with something about, you know, church or spirituality. This one is called Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar, PhD. It's a great book. I haven't finished all of it yet, but it has a section on Simplify, and it starts with Henry David Thoreau, who admonishes his contemporaries back in the 19th century to reduce the complexity of their daily lives. And he said, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I say, let your affairs be 2 or 3, and not 100 or 1,000. Thoreau's words are even more pertinent now, in a more complicated time, than they were at the time that he said them. And our author of this book had another thing to say that I thought was pretty pertinent. And he says, raise your level, excuse me, having trouble with my glasses. If I can do it, no, better with these, for sure. To raise your level of being, there is no way around simplifying your lives. To people as well as opportunity, we can make our lives better by simplifying it. It means prioritizing, choosing activities that we really, really want to do, and letting go of other things. Sometimes it's hard for us to or I should say for me, to let go. But it's nice to know that I can let go of a lot of things, and I can simplify my life in that way. Well, of course, our Christ self does live within each one of us. And here at the teaching of the inner Christ, we speak a lot about how the inner Christ helps us in many, many ways. Well, the inner Christ helped me as I was finding ways that I could simplify my life and learn about all kinds of self-awareness through this, and Christ's perfection, love, peace, joy, and Christ's authority. All of these things in our life also can help us to simplify our life when we really think about it. We learn to ask our Christ self for information about all areas of our life, and certainly about how to live simply, because that's a very pleasurable way to live, living simply. So, tuning in to our Christ selves to help us simplify our life is certainly something I invite you to do this week. We all know how to meditate. We all know how to tune in. Try it and see if it helps you to simplify living in your home, at work. Somebody said, well, I had to simplify everything because I taught kindergarten. That's true. I did have to simplify everything. However, sometimes my simplifying everything was difficult. Making it, simple enough for for a 5 or 6 year old. Or, I taught 7 and 8 year olds some too. But at any rate, we can all go back to the Christ vibration to simplify our lives. So let me know how you're doing with that. And I am continuing to work with my Christ self in simplifying my life as well. Thank you. Wonderful. God, and so it is.
A little help here, thank you.
Well, thank you, Reverend Elizabeth Brabant.